Mr. Vance's coffee cup stopped halfway to his lips. His eyes locked on the projection screen, widening slowly as the code cascaded across the display. His grip tightened around the ceramic mug until his knuckles went white. A single drop of coffee trembled on the rim, forgotten. No, that's not possible. The algorithm running on that screen was elegant, sophisticated. The kind of architecture Vance had spent 15 years in Silicon Valley trying, and failing, to create. The kind of breakthrough that venture capitalists threw millions at. The kind of innovation that changed careers, launched empires, made men rich beyond imagination. And it was being presented by a 14-year-old kid in a hoodie. Vance set down his coffee with exaggerated care, afraid his trembling hands would betray him. His mind was already racing, calculating, scheming. That app was worth a fortune, maybe multiple fortunes. And the only thing standing between him and that fortune was a freshman who probably didn't even understand what he'd built. This changes everything. Initiating final demonstration, Leo announced, his finger hovering over the enter key. The classroom hummed with anticipation. 28 students leaned forward in their seats, phones forgotten for once, actually engaged in something happening at school. Even Marcus Williams, legendary for sleeping through every class since 6th grade, had both eyes open and focused. Leo pressed enter. The test phone on his desk lit up with an incoming call. Unknown number. The speakers crackled to life with a recorded voice, syrupy sweet and professionally menacing at the same time. Hello, this is the Internal Revenue Service. There is a warrant out for your arrest due to unpaid taxes. Press 1 immediately to speak with a federal agent, or law enforcement will be dispatched to your location. On the projection screen, Leo's app exploded into action. Data streams cascaded down the left panel. Voice analysis patterns flickered and pulsed. A progress bar filled with startling speed, 40%, 65%, 90%. The screen flashed crimson. Scam alert, 94% probability. Recommendation, do not engage. The classroom erupted. Yo, what? Did that actually just happen? Leo, you're literally a genius. Destiny Jackson was already on her feet. Wait. So your phone just knows when someone's trying to scam you. Any smartphone, Leo confirmed, trying and failing to suppress his grin. It analyzes voice patterns in real time, cross-references a database of known scam techniques, and alerts the user before they can be manipulated. That's the hardest thing I've ever seen, Marcus declared. My abuela needs this yesterday. She almost wired money to some dude pretending to be my cousin last week. That's exactly why I built it. Leo's expression softened. My grandmother lost almost $50,000 to a call just like that one. They convinced her she owed back taxes. She was so scared, she bought gift cards for 6 hours straight trying to pay them off. The energy in the room shifted. Laughter faded into uncomfortable silence. She had a stroke a few weeks later. Leo continued quietly. Doctors said it was stress. She's better now, but I promised myself I'd build something that makes sure no other family has to go through what we did. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Someone coughed. Then, from the front of the room, came a voice like silk wrapped around a razor blade. Touching story, Mr. Wise. Every head turned toward Mr. Vance. He was leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, studying Leo with an expression that was impossible to read. His coffee sat untouched, a skin forming on its surface. Truly touching, Vance repeated. He rose slowly from his desk and began walking toward the projection screen, his leather shoes clicking against the linoleum with deliberate rhythm. And the technology itself is remarkable. Thank you, sir. Leo straightened proudly. I've been working on it for almost 2. The neural network integration alone must have taken months to optimize. Vance wasn't looking at Leo. He was studying the code on the screen with the intensity of a hungry dog eyeing a steak. And this voice synthesis detection protocol. I've seen similar architecture in corporate applications worth millions. I watched a lot of tutorials, and my mom helped me understand some of them. Your mother helped you. Vance's head turned slowly. His eyes met Leo's, and something in them made the temperature of the room drop 10 degrees. Tell me, Leo, what exactly does your mother do for a living? Leo hesitated. The question felt like a trap, but he couldn't see the teeth yet. She works in cybersecurity. Consulting, mostly. Cybersecurity. Vance nodded thoughtfully. How convenient. Sir, I'm just finding it fascinating, Vance continued, his voice silky smooth, that a 14-year-old with a cybersecurity expert for a mother has suddenly produced professional-grade software that rivals applications developed by entire engineering teams. The mood in the classroom shifted again. Students exchanged confused glances. Destiny frowned. Mr. Vance, what are you saying? I'm saying, Miss Jackson, that in 11 years of teaching computer science, I've learned to recognize genuine student work. Vance turned to face the class, spreading his hands like a prosecutor addressing a jury. I've also learned to recognize fraud. The word landed like a bomb. Fraud. Leo's voice cracked. Mr. Vance, I wrote every single line of that code myself. I can prove it. I have version histories, development logs, 2 years of documentation can be fabricated. Vance cut him off with a dismissive wave. Timestamps can be altered. The dark web is full of sophisticated software packages that desperate students purchase and present as their own work. That's insane. I would never. What's insane, Mr. Wise, is expecting me to believe that a freshman, even a bright one, independently developed technology that I couldn't create with 15 years of professional experience. The confession slipped out before Vance could stop it. For a split second, his mask cracked, revealing something raw and ugly underneath. Envy. Pure, corrosive envy. The kind that had been eating at him since his startup collapsed. Since his patent applications were rejected. Since he'd been forced to crawl back to teaching high school while his former colleagues became millionaires. Leo saw it. That flash of bitter resentment behind the professional facade. And suddenly, he understood exactly what was happening. You think I cheated, Leo said slowly, because you couldn't do what I did. The classroom went dead silent. Vance's expression hardened into stone. Excuse me. You've been teaching for 11 years. You just said you couldn't build something like this. So instead of accepting that a kid figured out something you couldn't, Leo's voice was steady now, powered by a righteous anger that surprised even him. You'd rather call me a thief. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Then Vance smiled. A cold, thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Wise, I was trying to give you the benefit of the doubt. I was trying to handle this quietly, professionally. But since you want to make accusations, he walked to his desk and pulled out a form. I'm officially recommending your immediate suspension pending investigation for academic dishonesty. And I'm confiscating your laptop as evidence. You can't do that. District Policy, Section 7.4. All materials related to suspected plagiarism must be secured. Vance was already moving toward Leo's desk, reaching for the laptop. You'll get it back once the illegal software has been scrubbed and the investigation is complete. That laptop is my personal property. My mom bought it for me. Then your mother can file a complaint with the district office. Vance unplugged the charger and wrapped the cord with practiced efficiency. In the meantime, I suggest you report to Principal Hart's office. I'll have the suspension paperwork filed within the hour. Leo stood frozen as Vance tucked the laptop. His laptop, containing everything he'd worked for, under his arm. The other students sat in stunned silence, witnesses to an execution none of them had seen coming. Class dismissed, Vance announced. Leo, you know the way. Students shuffled out in uncomfortable waves, avoiding Leo's eyes. A few muttered apologies. Destiny lingered at the door, looking like she wanted to say something, but Vance's glare sent her scurrying into the hallway. Then Leo was alone. Just him and the man who was about to steal his future. Mr. Vance. Leo's voice was barely a whisper. Please. That app is everything to me. I built it for my grandmother. I built it to help people. Vance paused at his desk, his back to Leo. When he spoke, his voice was almost gentle. You know what I've learned in my career, Leo? Ideas are worthless. Everyone has ideas. What matters is who gets credit. Who files the paperwork first. Who stands in front of the right people at the right time. He glanced over his shoulder, and Leo saw something terrible in his eyes. Triumph. You're a kid. An anonymous kid from the South Side with no connections, no platform, no credibility. Who do you think they're going to believe? You. He laughed softly. Or me. Leo's blood turned to ice. Now get out of my classroom. Leo walked to the door on wooden legs. His hand touched the handle. Turn around. Something whispered in his mind. Look. He turned. Vance had already opened Leo's laptop. His hand was already sliding into his pocket, pulling out a small black flash drive. His eyes were already scanning the code with the hunger of a man who'd finally found what he'd been searching for his entire failed career. Their eyes met. Vance didn't flinch, didn't look away. He simply smiled. A slow, satisfied smile that said everything words couldn't. What are you going to do about it? Leo stumbled into the hallway, his vision blurring. His hands were shaking so badly, he could barely grip his phone. The text to his mother was a mess of auto-corrected typos. Mom, come to school now. He took everything. He's stealing my app. Once saw him. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, don't move. Don't talk to anyone. I'm already in the car. A second message followed. And Leo, take a breath. This isn't over. It's just beginning. Leo slumped against the cold cinderblock wall, his world collapsing around him. But 30 minutes away, weaving through traffic with white-knuckled focus, Wendy Wise was already planning. She'd spent 15 years hunting hackers and thieves in the digital shadows. She'd brought down men far smarter and more powerful than some bitter high school teacher with delusions of grandeur. David Vance thought he'd just pulled off the perfect crime. He had no idea he'd just declared war on the wrong family. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to sign in at the front desk. Wendy Wise didn't slow down. She breezed past the security guard with a smile that was equal parts charm and warning, her vintage Nirvana t-shirt and ripped jeans making her look like she'd wandered in from a coffee shop rather than a corner office. Already did, sweetheart. Badge is right here. She flashed the visitor sticker she'd slapped on her jacket without breaking stride. The guard blinked, confused. He could have sworn she hadn't stopped at the desk, but she was already halfway down the hall, her sneakers squeaking against the freshly waxed floors. Winnie had learned a long time ago that people saw what they expected to see. A black woman in a power suit? Threat. Obstacle. Someone to question. A black woman in streetwear? Invisible. Harmless. Someone's cool aunt picking up her kid. She used that assumption like a skeleton key. Room 214. Computer science lab. The door was closed, but through the narrow window, Wendy could see him, Mr. Vance, hunched over a laptop that definitely wasn't his, typing with the frantic energy of a man racing a clock. She didn't knock. Mr. Vance. Wendy pushed the door open and stepped inside, letting it swing shut behind her with a soft click. I'm Leo's mother. I believe you have something that belongs to my son. Vance's head snapped up. For a split second, Wendy caught it, the flash of panic in his eyes, the way his hand instinctively moved to cover the laptop screen. Then his expression smoothed into something polished. Professional. Practiced. Ah, Mrs. Wise. I was wondering when you'd arrive. He leaned back in his chair, folding his hands over his stomach like a man with nothing to hide. Please, have a seat. We have much to discuss about your son's situation. Winnie didn't sit. She walked slowly around the room instead, examining the posters on the walls, motivational quotes about innovation, photos of Silicon Valley landmarks, a framed certificate from some tech conference nobody had heard of. Interesting decor, she said casually. You spend a lot of time out in California? Vance's smile tightened. A few years. Before I discovered my passion for education. When he picked up a small trophy from his shelf. Regional coding competition, 3rd place, 2019. Must have been hard. Leaving all that behind. Teaching is its own reward. I'm sure it is. She set the trophy down and finally turned to face him. Now, about that laptop. Vance's pleasant expression didn't waver, but something shifted behind his eyes. Mrs. Wise, I understand this is difficult to hear, but your son submitted work that was clearly not his own. District policy requires me to confiscate potential evidence. Yes, I heard. When he took a step closer. What I'm curious about is what happens to that evidence after you confiscate it. It gets reviewed by our IT department. Does it? Wendy tilted her head. Because from what I saw through that window, it looked like you were reviewing it pretty thoroughly yourself. Vance's jaw tightened. I was documenting the violation. With a flash drive? Silence. Wendy smiled. Not a friendly smile, but the kind that made opposing lawyers nervous in depositions. Mr. Vance, I'm going to be very clear with you. I'm not here to argue about my son's grade. Grades can be disputed through proper channels. I'm here to retrieve property that does not belong to this school. That laptop was used to submit fraudulent. That laptop was purchased by me, registered in my name, and contains software developed by my minor child. Whatever you think he did, you have no legal right to hold his personal device without a formal investigation process, parental notification, and district approval. Wendy pulled out her phone. I've already contacted the superintendent's office. They seem very interested in discussing your documentation methods. For the first time, Vance's composure cracked. His eye twitched. His fingers drummed against the desk. Mrs. Wise, he said slowly, I think you're misunderstanding the situation. Am I? Your son is in serious trouble. Academic dishonesty can result in expulsion, a permanent mark on his record. Do you really want to make this harder for him by turning it into a legal matter? Wendy stepped forward until she was standing directly across the desk from him, close enough to see the sweat beading at his temple, close enough to smell the coffee on his breath. Mr. Vance, she said softly, I've spent 15 years in cybersecurity. I've testified in federal court against hackers who stole millions. I've consulted for 3 Fortune 500 companies and 2 government agencies. Do you really want to threaten me with a legal matter? Vance swallowed hard. Now, Wendy continued, her voice still calm, still pleasant. I'm going to give you a choice. You can return that laptop to me right now, drop the suspension nonsense, and we can all pretend this was a simple misunderstanding. Or, she glanced at his computer monitor, still visible from where she stood, still showing the open browser tab he'd forgotten to minimize. Tech Pioneer Grant Application Portal. Submission deadline, 5 p.m. today. Wendy's smile widened. Or I can start asking questions about why a high school teacher is submitting grant applications during school hours, using code that looks remarkably similar to a 14-year-old's science project. Vance's face went pale. That's not. Take your time, Mr. Vance. Wendy stepped back, her tone suddenly light and breezy again. Make sure you get every line of code exactly right. I'd hate for you to miss something important. She turned and walked toward the door, pausing with her hand on the handle. I'll be back for that laptop tomorrow, after the superintendent and I have had our little chat. She glanced over her shoulder. Oh, and Mr. Vance, my son's application has biometric authentication, fingerprint, voice recognition, the works. Good luck explaining that when you try to demo it. She winked and walked out. In the hallway, Leo was waiting, his face tight with anxiety. Mom? What happened? Did you get it back? Wendy put her arm around her son's shoulders and guided him toward the exit. Not yet, baby. But don't worry. Her eyes gleamed with something fierce. Mr. Vance is about to learn a very important lesson about stealing from the wrong family. What are we going to do? Wendy pushed open the front doors and stepped into the afternoon sunlight. We're going to let him think he won, and then we're going to watch him destroy himself. I can't believe this is happening. Leo sat slumped on the basement couch, his head in his hands. The glow of 6 computer monitors cast blue shadows across his face, but he wasn't looking at any of them. He was staring at the floor, at nothing, at the shattered pieces of everything he'd worked for. 2 years, Mom. 2 years I spent on that app. Every weekend, every summer break, every night when I should have been sleeping. His voice cracked, and he just took it, like it was nothing. Wendy stood at her workstation, fingers flying across the keyboard. 3 screens displayed code. One showed a network map. Another was running a trace she'd started 20 minutes ago. It's not nothing, baby, she said without turning around. That's exactly why he took it. What's the point? Leo looked up, his eyes red. Even if we get it back, he's already copied everything. He's probably already submitted it to that grant thing. My code is going to have his name on it forever. Maybe. Wendy hit enter and finally turned to face her son. Or maybe not. Mom, I appreciate you trying to make me feel better, but... Leo. Wendy walked over and sat down next to him on the couch. She took his hands in hers. Hands that had built something remarkable. Hands that deserved to be celebrated, not punished. Look at me. He met her eyes reluctantly. When I was 23 years old, fresh out of college, I got my first job at a security firm in Atlanta. Small company, big dreams. I spent 6 months developing a new encryption protocol. Revolutionary stuff. My boss loved it. She paused. Loved it so much that he presented it at a conference in Vegas. Under his own name. Didn't mention me once. Leo's expression shifted from despair to anger. What did you do? I cried. Then I got mad. Then I got smart. When he squeezed his hands. That man thought he'd stolen my future. Instead, he gave me the most valuable lesson of my career. Never build something you can't protect. But the code is all ready. Leo, baby, listen to me. Wendy's voice dropped low and serious. Did you really think I'd let you deploy an application, even a prototype, without building in safeguards? Leo blinked. What do you mean? Wendy stood and walked back to her workstation, gesturing for Leo to follow. She pulled up a window showing cloud storage logs, timestamps, and access records. Mr. Vance took the laptop. That's true. But what does every device in this house automatically connect to? Leo's eyes widened. The home server. The home server. Wendy nodded. Which means we have complete backups of everything. Every version. Every update. Every line of code. Time-stamped and encrypted, stored on hardware that Mr. Vance doesn't even know exists. So we have proof that I wrote it first. We have more than proof, Leo. Wendy pulled up another window. We have access. On the screen, a familiar file structure appeared. Leo's project folder. His application files. His documentation. All of it. Mirrored from the laptop that was currently sitting in Mr. Vance's classroom. Wait. Leo leaned closer. Is that a live connection? Cloud Sync works both ways, baby. When Mr. Vance connected your laptop to the school's Wi-Fi, he connected it to us. Wendy's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. I can see everything he's doing. Every file he opens. Every line he changes. Every keystroke. Leo stared at the screen, his despair slowly transforming into something else. Something that looked like hope. So what do? Lock him out. Delete everything remotely? Report him to the police. No. Wendy shook her head. That's what he'd expect. That's what a normal person would do. And if we do that, he becomes the victim. Poor teacher, attacked by hackers, falsely accused by angry parents. She turned to face Leo fully. We're not going to stop him, Leo. We're going to help him. Help him? Mom, he stole my. We're going to help him steal it perfectly. Wendy's eyes gleamed. We're going to make sure he takes everything. Every file. Every feature. And then, when he stands up in front of the whole school board to present his brilliant invention, she pulled up a new coding window. We're going to let the code speak for itself. Leo was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, understanding dawned on his face. A Trojan horse. My smart boy. Wendy ruffled his hair. Not a virus. Nothing illegal. Nothing that could get us in trouble. Just a small modification to the presentation protocol. A feature that only activates under very specific circumstances. Like what? Like when the application is displayed on a projector, in front of an audience, while connected to a network that isn't ours. When he started typing, her fingers dancing across the keys. I need you to rewrite the authentication sequence. Add a delayed verification check. If the biometric data doesn't match your profile within 60 seconds of launch, the system flags itself as stolen property. Leo was already pulling up a chair, his earlier despair completely forgotten, and displays the original creator's information, along with a few other surprises. When he glanced at him, think you can add a voice recording function? Something that captures ambient audio and plays it back on command. Mom, I could do that in my sleep. Good, because we're going to need it. For the next 3 hours, mother and son worked side by side. Leo rebuilt the authentication system from the ground up, adding layers of verification that would be invisible during normal use but devastating during a presentation. When he handled the network side, making sure the modified files would sync back to the stolen laptop without triggering any alerts. By midnight, it was done. Leo leaned back in his chair, exhausted but electric. You really think he'll fall for it? Baby, men like Mr. Vance always fall for it. Wendy saved the final file and initiated the sync. Because they're so convinced of their own brilliance that they never stop to ask why things are going so smoothly. What if he tests it first? What if he notices the changes? He won't test it. He can't. Wendy pointed to the grant deadline on her screen. He's got less than 18 hours to submit his application. Then the school board meeting is the day after tomorrow. He's rushing, he's desperate, and he's greedy. That's the perfect recipe for disaster. She stood up and stretched, her joints popping after hours of work. Get some sleep, Leo. Tomorrow, we go back to that school. We look defeated. We look beaten. We let Mr. Vance think he's won. And then, Wendy smiled. A real smile this time, warm and proud and full of love for her son. And then we watched the fireworks. Leo nodded and headed for the stairs. He paused at the bottom step, looking back at his mother silhouetted against the glow of the monitors. Mom, thanks. For believing me. For fighting for me. Always, baby. Wendy blew him a kiss. Now go to bed. We've got a trap to spring. Order. I said order, please. Principal Hart banged his gavel against the wooden podium like a man trying to kill a fly. The school board conference room was packed. 12 board members seated at the long table, a handful of teachers along the walls, and a growing crowd of parents who'd heard rumors and come to watch the spectacle. Wendy sat in the back row, her expression carefully neutral. Leo was beside her, his hands clasped tightly in his lap, his eyes fixed on the floor. They looked exactly like what everyone expected, a defeated mother, a disgraced son, waiting for the inevitable verdict. Mr. Vance stood at the front of the room, dressed in his best suit, his hair slicked back, his smile radiating confidence. He'd been talking for 10 minutes straight, painting a picture of a troubled student, a pattern of behavior, a concerned teacher who'd had no choice but to act. And so, with great reluctance, I was forced to confiscate the device and recommend suspension. Vance shook his head sadly. I take no pleasure in this, believe me. Leo is a bright young man, but academic integrity must be preserved. Thank you, Mr. Vance. Principal Hart nodded gravely. Mrs. Wise, would you like to respond? When he stood slowly. I would, Principal Hart. But first, I'd like to ask a simple question. She looked directly at Vance. Where is the laptop now? Vance's smile flickered. It's secured in my classroom. As I mentioned, it's being held as evidence. Evidence of what, exactly? Of the stolen code your son submitted as his own work. And how did you determine it was stolen? Vance spread his hands. The sophistication of the programming. The professional-level architecture. No 14-year-old could produce work of that caliber independently. I see. Wendy nodded thoughtfully. So your evidence is that my son's work is too good. That's the crime. Being excellent. Murmurs rippled through the room. A few parents shifted uncomfortably. That's a gross oversimplification. Is it? Wendy took a step forward. Because I've seen my son's browser history, Mr. Vance. I've seen the tutorials he watched, the documentation he read, the online courses he completed. I've seen 2 years of commit logs, version histories, and development notes. All time-stamped. All verifiable. Vance's jaw tightened. Anyone can fabricate digital records. Can they? That's interesting. Wendy pulled out her phone. Because I've also been in contact with the superintendent's office. They're very curious about the chain of custody for this so-called evidence. Specifically, why a classroom teacher is holding a student's personal property without filing the proper documentation. I was following protocol. Were you? Wendy's voice sharpened. Because Protocol 7.3 of the district's academic integrity policy clearly states that confiscated devices must be surrendered to the IT department within 4 hours. It's been 2 days, Mr. Vance. Where's the paperwork? Vance's face reddened. This is a witch hunt. You're trying to distract from your son's dishonesty with bureaucratic technicalities. I'm trying to understand why you're so desperate to keep that laptop. The room went quiet. Board members exchanged glances. Principal Hart looked increasingly uncomfortable. And then, from the corner of the room, came a voice. Excuse me. Everyone turned. Near the back door, partially hidden behind a supply cart, stood an elderly black man in a gray custodial uniform. His name tag read Henderson. His hands were trembling slightly, but his eyes were steady. I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Henderson said, his voice rough with age but clear enough to carry. But I think I might have something to add. Principal Hart frowned. Mr. Henderson, this is a closed session. Staff members aren't. Let him speak. Board member Patricia Coleman, a retired judge with silver hair and zero patience for nonsense, raised her hand. If he has relevant information, we should hear it. Henderson shuffled forward, clutching his mop handle like a lifeline. I clean Mr. Vance's classroom every night. Been doing it for 12 years. I see things. Hear things. He swallowed hard. Things I probably wasn't supposed to. Vance's expression shifted from annoyance to alarm. This is ridiculous. The janitor has nothing to do with. 2 nights ago, Henderson continued, ignoring Vance completely. I came in to empty the trash. Mr. Vance was still there. Usually he leaves by 5, but this time he was at his computer, working on something. Mr. Henderson, I really don't think. He had that boy's laptop open. Henderson pointed a gnarled finger at Vance. The one he took from Leo. He was copying files to a flash drive. Lots of files. Took him near an hour. The murmurs in the room grew louder. Board members were leaning forward now, their attention fully captured. That's a lie. Vance's composure cracked. This man has no idea what he saw. He's barely literate. Henderson flinched, but stood his ground. I know what copying looks like, Mr. Vance. Been watching people use computers longer than you've been teaching. And I suppose you also know programming? You understand code. Vance laughed, an ugly, desperate sound. This is absurd. Who are you going to believe? An educator with a master's degree? Or the help? The word landed like a slap. Several board members recoiled. Patricia Coleman's eyes narrowed to slits. Even Principal Hart looked disgusted. Mr. Vance, Coleman said icily, I'd advise you to choose your words more carefully. But Vance was spiraling now, his fear overriding his judgment. I'm sorry, but this is clearly a coordinated attack. The mother coaches the janitor. The janitor makes wild accusations. It's all designed to deflect from the fact that her son is a cheat. I ain't been coached by nobody. Henderson's voice was quiet but firm. And I ain't finished. He reached into the pocket of his uniform and pulled out a smartphone. Old, cracked, but functional. I didn't just see Mr. Vance copying those files. I heard him on the phone afterward, talking to someone about selling something. He used the words intellectual property and bidding war. Said he was going to flip this kid's code and pay off his car. That's preposterous. So I recorded it. Henderson held up the phone. Didn't know if anyone would believe me otherwise. Been invisible in this building for 12 years. Figured I needed proof. The room exploded. Board members were talking over each other. Parents were standing up to get a better look. Principal Hart was banging his gavel uselessly. Wendy remained seated, her face carefully blank, but inside she was singing. She hadn't planned this. Henderson's testimony was a gift, a beautiful, unexpected gift that changed everything. She glanced at Leo. His eyes were wide, his mouth slightly open. She squeezed his hand once, a silent message, stay calm. This is just the beginning. Patricia Coleman raised her hand, and the room gradually quieted. Mr. Henderson, she said, would you be willing to submit that recording as evidence? Yes, ma'am. I surely would. Coleman turned to Principal Hart. I think we need to postpone any disciplinary action against Leo Wise until this recording has been reviewed and authenticated. And I think Mr. Vance should be placed on administrative leave effective immediately. Now wait just a minute, Vance started. Furthermore, Coleman continued, her voice cutting through his protest like a knife. I understand Mr. Vance is scheduled to present some sort of technology demonstration at tomorrow's donor event. Given these allegations, I recommend that presentation proceed as planned, but under close observation. Vance's face went pale. Then, slowly, it shifted into something else. Something that looked almost like relief. Fine, he said tightly. Fine. I welcome the scrutiny. Tomorrow, I'll prove that this entire farce is nothing but a desperate mother's conspiracy. Wendy smiled. Perfect. The auditorium was packed. 300 seats filled with donors, board members, local business owners, and a smattering of press who'd caught wind that something interesting might happen at Lincoln High's annual Innovation Showcase. The event was Principal Hart's pride and joy, a chance to parade the school's brightest achievements in front of people with deep pockets and generous checkbooks. Tonight, the centerpiece was supposed to be Mr. Vance's groundbreaking AI demonstration. Wendy settled into a seat near the back, Leo beside her. They'd dressed down deliberately, Leo in a simple hoodie, Wendy in jeans and a cardigan. Nothing threatening, nothing memorable, just two people who happened to be in the audience. You sure this is going to work? Leo whispered, his leg bouncing with nervous energy. Baby, I've been sure since the moment that man decided to plug a stolen laptop into a public network. Wendy patted his knee. Just breathe, watch, and try not to smile too early. On stage, Principal Hart was finishing his introduction, his voice booming through the speakers with practiced enthusiasm. And so it gives me tremendous pleasure to introduce one of our most innovative educators, a man who has dedicated his career to nurturing the next generation of tech leaders. Please welcome Mr. David Vance. Polite applause rippled through the auditorium as Vance strode onto the stage. He'd gone all out. New suit, fresh haircut, a wireless microphone clipped to his lapel. He looked every inch the visionary genius he was pretending to be. Thank you, Principal Hart. Thank you all for being here tonight. Vance's smile was blinding. What I'm about to show you represents months of dedicated research and development. A passion project that I believe will revolutionize how we protect our most vulnerable citizens. When he felt Leo tense beside her, she squeezed his hand once. Not yet. As many of you know, senior citizens lose billions of dollars every year to phone scams. Criminals prey on their trust, their confusion, their isolation. Vance shook his head sadly. I asked myself, what if technology could fight back? What if we could build an AI guardian angel that protects our grandparents from these predators? He gestured grandly toward the giant screen behind him. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you, Senior Shield. He clicked the remote, and Leo's app appeared on the massive display. The interface was clean, professional, beautiful, exactly as Leo had designed it. The audience murmured appreciatively. Senior Shield uses advanced voice pattern recognition and natural language processing to detect scam calls in real time. Vance walked across the stage, his confidence growing with every word. It analyzes speech patterns, identifies suspicious phrases, and alerts the user before they can be victimized. He clicked again, and a demo video began playing. The same demo Leo had presented in class, with Leo's voice carefully edited out and replaced with Vance's narration. This is actually insane, Leo breathed. He didn't even change the interface. That's my exact color scheme. My exact font choices. Shoo. Winnie's eyes were fixed on the screen. Wait for it. Vance was beaming now, basking in the impressed murmurs of the audience. The applications are endless. Hospitals, retirement communities, home care services. I've already received interest from several venture capital firms eager to bring this technology to market. He paused for effect, letting the weight of that statement sink in. But tonight, I want to show you something special. A live demonstration. He walked to the laptop, Leo's laptop, which sat connected to the auditorium's projection system. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. I'm going to call this phone. He held up a prepaid cell, using a recorded scam script. And you'll see, in real time, how Senior Shield identifies and flags the threat. He initiated the call. The audience leaned forward. On the giant screen, the app interface came alive, monitoring the incoming audio. The recording played. Hello, this is the IRS. There is a warrant for your arrest due to unpaid taxes. Press 1 to speak with an agent immediately. The app analyzed, processed, and then the screen went red. Not the gentle warning red of Leo's original design. A deep, pulsing crimson that filled the entire display. The audience gasped. And then the text appeared. System alert, stolen property. Vance's smile froze. What the? This application is the intellectual property of Leo Wise. No. Vance lunged for the laptop, but the display had locked. His frantic clicks did nothing. Unauthorized use detected. Biometric verification failed. Initiating evidence playback. The screen flickered, and suddenly the auditorium was filled with sound. Not the scam recording. Something else. A voice. Vance's voice. Crystal clear through the auditorium's high-end speakers. Yeah, I got it. The whole thing. Kid had no idea what he was sitting on. I'm telling you, this is worth 6 figures minimum. Maybe 7 if we market it right. A pause. Then another voice, tinny, coming through a phone speaker. And you're sure he can't prove it's his? Are you kidding? He's 14. Black kid from the South Side. Who's going to believe him over me? I'll say he downloaded it off the dark web. By the time anyone investigates, I'll have the patent filed and the first licensing deal signed. The audience sat in stunned silence. A woman in the front row had her hand pressed over her mouth. A man in a business suit was already pulling out his phone to record. Vance stood frozen on stage, his face the color of ash. The recording continued. What about the janitor? Didn't you say he saw something? Henderson? Please. That old man's been pushing a mop for 40 years. You think anyone's going to listen to the help? I'll have him fired before he can open his mouth. The words echoed through the silent auditorium. The help. The same phrase he'd used at the board meeting. The same contempt. The same arrogance. Principal Hart stood frozen at the side of the stage, his face cycling through shock, horror, and dawning realization that his prized innovation showcase had just become a crime scene. Patricia Coleman rose from her seat in the VIP section. Her voice cut through the silence like a blade. Principal Hart, I believe we've seen enough. Hart finally moved, his legs carrying him woodenly toward the stage. 2 security guards who'd been stationed at the doors were already approaching from either side. David. Hart's voice was barely a whisper, but the microphone caught it, broadcasting his devastation to the entire room. Tell me this isn't real. Tell me there's an explanation. Vance's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. On the screen behind him, the final message appeared. Original creation date, March 15th, 2024. Creator, Wendy Wise. All development logs preserved and timestamped. Evidence package transmitted to District Superintendent, Local Police Department, State Attorney General's Office. Vance saw that last line and crumbled. His knees buckled. He grabbed the podium for support, but it wasn't enough. He sank to the stage floor, his expensive suit crumpling beneath him. I can explain. Save it for your lawyer. Patricia Coleman nodded to security. Get him out of here. And somebody call the police. As the guards lifted Vance to his feet, he looked out into the audience, scanning desperately for something, someone, anything that might save him. His eyes found Wendy. She was still seated, still calm, still wearing that same neutral expression she'd had all evening. But as their eyes met, she allowed herself one small gesture. She waved, just a little wave, barely a flutter of fingers. But in that moment, Vance understood everything. The sync, the trap, the recording, all of it had been designed, orchestrated, and executed with surgical precision. He'd been played from the very beginning, and there was absolutely nothing he could do about it. The auditorium had erupted into chaos the moment security escorted Vance off the stage. Donors were clustering in confused groups, checking their phones, whispering behind cupped hands. Board members huddled with lawyers who'd materialized out of nowhere. Reporters who'd come expecting a fluff piece about high school innovation were now frantically calling their editors, sensing the kind of story that won awards. Through it all, Wendy and Leo sat quietly in their seats, watching the storm unfold around them. Mom. Leo's voice was barely audible over the commotion. Did that really just happen? Wendy put her arm around her son and pulled him close. Yeah, baby. That really just happened. I can't believe. I mean, I knew the plan, but seeing it actually work. Leo shook his head, dazed. He just stood there, in front of everyone, and his own voice destroyed him. That's the thing about liars, Leo. When he kissed the top of his head, they always think they're the smartest person in the room. They never imagine that someone might be 3 steps ahead. A commotion near the stage drew their attention. Principal Hart had taken the microphone, his face pale and sweating under the lights. The man looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past 10 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, please. If I could have your attention. He waited for the noise to subside, though it never fully did. I want to assure everyone that Lincoln High School takes these allegations extremely seriously. We will be conducting a full investigation, and we will cooperate completely with law enforcement. What about the boy? Someone shouted from the crowd. The one whose work was stolen? Hart swallowed hard. His eyes scanned the audience until they found Wendy and Leo in the back row. For a long moment, he simply stared, caught between institutional instinct and the undeniable truth that had just been broadcast to 300 witnesses. Wendy Wise, Hart said slowly, is a student at this school. A student who, I am now learning, may have been gravely wronged by a member of our faculty. He paused, visibly struggling. Leo, would you please come up here? Leo looked at his mother, uncertain. Wendy nodded once. Go ahead, baby. This is your moment. Leo rose on unsteady legs and made his way down the aisle. The crowd parted for him, people craning their necks to get a look at the 14-year-old whose invention had just exposed a thief. By the time he reached the stage, the auditorium had fallen completely silent. Hart extended his hand. Leo shook it, his grip firm despite his nerves. Leo, I owe you an apology. Hart's voice cracked slightly. This school owes you an apology. You came to us with something remarkable, something that could help people, protect people, and instead of celebrating your achievement, He trailed off, unable to finish. You believed him over me, Leo said quietly. Not accusatory, just factual. Hart flinched like he'd been struck. Yes, we did, and that was wrong. A woman in the front row stood up. Patricia Coleman, her silver hair gleaming under the stage lights, her expression as sharp as ever. Principal Hart, I think this situation requires more than an apology. She turned to address the full audience. I'm calling an emergency session of the school board for tomorrow morning. Among the items on the agenda will be the immediate reinstatement of Leo Wise with full honors, the formal expungement of any disciplinary actions from his record, and the establishment of a scholarship fund in his name. Applause erupted from various corners of the auditorium. Leo ducked his head, embarrassed but pleased. Furthermore, Coleman continued, I will personally be recommending Leo's application to the Tech Pioneer Grant Committee, the same grant that Mr. Vance attempted to steal credit for. With verified documentation of original authorship, I expect Leo will be a strong contender. More applause. A few people were actually standing now, giving Leo an ovation he'd never imagined receiving. In the back row, Wendy wiped a tear from her cheek. After everything, the sleepless nights, the careful planning, the moments of doubt, seeing her son on that stage, vindicated and celebrated, made it all worth it. Mrs. Wise. Wendy turned. Mr. Henderson stood in the aisle beside her row, his custodial uniform exchanged for a slightly rumpled but clean button-down shirt. He was clutching a paper coffee cup like a lifeline. Mr. Henderson. Wendy rose and took his weathered hands in hers. I can't thank you enough. What you did in that board meeting, standing up to Vance, showing that recording, you didn't have to do any of that. Henderson shrugged, embarrassed. That boy helped me once. Last winter, when I threw out my back trying to move some desks. Leo stayed after class, helped me clean the whole room, didn't want nothing for it. Just said it was the right thing to do. Wendy smiled. That sounds like my son. When I saw what Vance was doing, I couldn't just stand by. Henderson shook his head. 12 years I've worked in this building. 12 years of being invisible. But being invisible don't mean being blind. And it don't mean being silent when something's wrong. You're not invisible, Mr. Henderson. Not anymore. Before he could respond, Patricia Coleman appeared beside them. Mr. Henderson, I've just spoken with the superintendent. Given your crucial role in exposing this situation, the district would like to offer you a formal commendation. There's also been discussion of a raise and a promotion to head of facilities management. Henderson's eyes went wide. Ma'am, I don't know what to say. Say yes. Coleman smiled, a rare expression that transformed her stern features. This school needs more people with your integrity. As Henderson stammered his thanks, when he slipped away toward the exit, the crowd was beginning to thin, donors making their excuses, board members rushing off to damage control meetings. The circus was winding down. She stepped outside into the cool night air and took a deep breath. The parking lot was half empty now, cars pulling away in steady streams. Police cruisers sat near the main entrance, their lights painting red and blue patterns across the brick walls. And there, near the far end of the lot, she spotted him. Vance stood beside a dented Honda Civic that had seen better days, probably the car he'd been so desperate to pay off. His hands were cuffed in front of him, a uniformed officer guiding him toward an open cruiser door. When he walked closer, not too close, just close enough, Vance saw her approaching and stopped. The officer paused, looking between them. Mrs. Wise. Vance's voice was hollow, emptied of all its former confidence. I suppose you're here to gloat. No. When he shook her head. I'm here to give you some advice. He laughed bitterly. Advice. That's rich. When you get out, however many years from now that is, find something you're actually good at. Something that belongs to you. Build something real. She paused. Because stealing from children? That's not ambition, Mr. Vance. That's just sad. Before he could respond, the officer pushed his head down and guided him into the back of the cruiser. The door slammed shut with a final, metallic thunk. As the car pulled away, Vance's phone buzzed on the passenger seat of his abandoned Civic. Confiscated during the arrest, but not yet collected as evidence. Through the window, when he could see the screen light up with a notification. A familiar interface. Leo's app. Running one final scan. Alert. Document flagged. File. David_Vance_resume.pdf. Analysis. Likely fraudulent. Confidence. 97%. Wendy laughed, a real laugh, full and warm, rising into the night sky. Mom. She turned. Leo was jogging across the parking lot toward her, his face flushed with excitement. Behind him, Mr. Henderson waved goodbye before climbing into an old pickup truck. Mom, you're not going to believe this. Leo skidded to a stop beside her, breathless. Ms. Coleman introduced me to this guy from the grant committee. He watched the whole demo, the real demo, after everything went down. He said my app is exactly what they've been looking for. He wants to set up a meeting next week. Leo, that's amazing. And Principal Hart said the school wants to create a computer science award in my name. And this reporter from the Tribune asked if she could interview me tomorrow. And he stopped, finally noticing the police cruiser disappearing around the corner. Was that? Yeah. Wendy nodded. That was him. Leo was quiet for a moment, watching the taillights fade into the distance. I thought I'd feel happy, seeing him like that. But I just feel. He searched for the word. Tired. Wendy put her arm around him. That's because you're not like him, baby. You don't get joy from other people's pain. You get joy from building things. From helping people. From making the world a little bit better. Is that why you didn't want to just call the cops from the beginning? Why you let him dig his own grave? Partly. Wendy guided him toward their car. But also because I wanted you to see something important. People like Vance. They don't fail because someone catches them. They fail because their own arrogance catches up with them. All we did was give him the rope. Leo nodded slowly. So what happens now? Wendy unlocked the car, and they climbed inside. Through the windshield, the school building glowed against the night sky. The same building where, just days ago, her son had been branded a cheater and a thief. Now, Wendy started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot. Now we go home. We get some sleep. And tomorrow, we start building the next thing. The next thing? You've got a meeting with a grant committee, a scholarship in your name, and a whole world of people who just learned what Leo Wise can do. She grinned at him. Baby, this isn't the end of your story. This is just the beginning. Leo leaned back in his seat, a smile spreading across his face for the first time in days. Behind them, Lincoln High School grew smaller in the rearview mirror. Ahead, the road stretched into darkness, full of possibility. And somewhere in the city, a police cruiser carried a ruined man toward the consequences of his own choices, forever haunted by the knowledge that he'd been outsmarted by a mother in a Nirvana t-shirt and a 14-year-old kid with a dream.